Do you feel like life is constantly throwing challenges at you? Unstable work, financial struggles, tense relationships, everything feels like it's working against you. But what's the truth? The world doesn't care about your feelings. It will keep moving, whether you stand strong or collapse. So how do you stay firm in the storm? Stoicism has the answer. These philosophies have helped Roman warriors, great leaders, and today's top entrepreneurs overcome adversity. In this video, I'll show you 4 Stoic mindsets that will help you master stress, take control of your life, and become a man who cannot be broken. If you're ready to abandon the victim mentality and train yourself to become unstoppable, keep watching. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're new here. It helps me keep bringing you more valuable content. Tom Parker, a 48-year-old businessman from Texas, spent his entire life building his company from nothing. He was no stranger to pressure. He had worked 16-hour days, fought for every contract, and kept his company alive through crises. But this time, everything was beyond his control. The economy collapsed, inflation skyrocketed, a major client canceled a multi-million-dollar contract. The bank pressured him over his loans. A senior employee, someone Tom had trusted, left to work for a competitor. Everything felt like a storm consuming him. Tom couldn't sleep. He stayed up until 3 a.m., reading hundreds of financial reports, searching for some way to regain control. But the more he searched, the more his mind spiraled into chaos. One night, exhausted, he picked up a book on Stoicism, a gift from his wife that he had never bothered to read. One sentence changed everything. We cannot control the world, but we can always control ourselves. That was the truth. Tom couldn't change the economy. He couldn't force his client to stay. He couldn't control other people's decisions. But he could control himself. He could choose whether to face this as a victim or a warrior. The next day, he walked into his company with a different mindset. Instead of panicking, he cut unnecessary costs and looked for new clients, instead of mourning the lost ones. Instead of blaming others, he stopped lashing out at employees and family. When the bank pressured him, he didn't react emotionally. He sat down and negotiated. When an employee quit, he didn't take it as betrayal. He saw it as an opportunity to rebuild his team. His company still struggled, but one thing had changed. Tom was no longer a man who had lost his way. He was in control of himself, and he realized that was the most important thing of all. A month passed and things still hadn't improved. Tom's company continued struggling through the crisis. Some days he felt like everything was moving in the right direction, but immediately after, a new problem would arise. A major partner refused to renew their contract. The bank denied the loan he had hoped would sustain cash flow. A client owing hundreds of thousands of dollars declared bankruptcy, leaving his company with a massive loss. Any man would go insane in this situation. Before, Tom would have too. He used to be the kind of person who always wanted to control everything, and when things didn't go according to plan, he would get angry, blame others, or sink into despair. But now, he had changed. When bad news arrived, he no longer asked, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, he asked, "What is fate testing me for?" One morning, as he sipped his coffee, Tom recalled the early days of his career. He had once been a salesman who faced rejection time and time again. At one point, he couldn't even afford rent and had to borrow money from friends just to get by. When he first started his business, he had nothing but an old car and a dream that seemed impossible. There were nights when he sat alone in his tiny apartment, questioning whether he was wasting his life. And yet, he had overcome it all. Those challenges hadn't destroyed him, they had shaped him. Now was no different. If life was a series of tests, this was just another trial. Tom knew that no one could control adversity, but everyone could control how they faced it. So instead of resisting and panicking, he chose to accept it as part of the journey. The next day, when an employee informed him of their resignation, he didn't get angry but simply smiled. Good, this is an opportunity for me to find someone who's a better fit. When a loan application was denied, he didn't sink into despair but immediately listed alternative options. When a major client disappeared along with their unpaid debt, he didn't sit around complaining but focused on finding new business opportunities. And gradually, he realized something important. Adversity wasn't working against him. It was testing whether he truly deserved success. If fate wanted to test him, then so be it. He wouldn't back down. Tom had always been a strong man, but that didn't mean he was immune to negative emotions. Whenever bad news arrived, he still felt the surge of anger, the sting of disappointment, the weight of worry, and at times even fear. But the difference now was that he no longer let those emotions control him. Before, whenever he faced a major issue, he reacted immediately. A rejected business proposal could ruin his entire day. A mistake from an employee could send him into a rage, yelling, only to regret it later. His emotions dictated his actions, and more than once, they had driven him into poor decisions. But now, Tom followed a simple yet powerful Stoic principle. He observed his emotions, but he did not become them. Every time he worried about the future, he asked himself, "Is this really as bad as I think? A year from now, will this even matter?" Most of the time, the answer was no. Every time he felt anger rising over something not going his way, he stopped and reminded himself, "Will this anger help me solve the problem?" If the answer was no, he let it go. One afternoon, while at his office, Tom received a call from his CFO. "We have a problem. Cash flow is drying up, and if we don't find a solution, we may have to cut staff." In the past, this would have been the moment where Tom slammed his hand on the desk, shouted in frustration, and rushed into a hasty decision. But this time, he simply took a deep breath. He felt the fear creeping into his mind, but instead of letting it consume him, he observed it like an outsider. He reminded himself, emotions are not reality, they are just the mind's reactions. So instead of making a decision in panic, he took 30 minutes to step outside, walk, breathe deeply, and think clearly. When he returned to his desk, he was no longer a man driven by emotions. He was a strategist, cold and calculating, analyzing every possible move with logic. And only when his mind was truly clear did he make a decision. The financial crisis didn't disappear overnight, but Tom's way of dealing with it had completely changed. He was no longer a man controlled by his emotions. He was the master of them. And in a chaotic world, that is the most powerful weapon a man can possess. Tom understood that life never goes according to plan. The most successful people aren't the ones who avoid adversity, they're the ones who are ready for it. That's exactly what he did. He practiced the Stoic mindset by mentally preparing for the worst possible outcomes. Every morning, before starting his workday, Tom would take a few minutes to ask himself, what could go wrong today? What could collapse? And if it happens, how will I respond? One day, he received an email from the bank. The loan he had been hoping for was officially denied. For many entrepreneurs, this would be a devastating blow. They would panic, lose morale, and feel like their only door had just been slammed shut. But Tom had already prepared for this moment. A week earlier, he had sat down with a sheet of paper and written out every worst-case scenario he could think of. If the bank denies my loan, what are my alternatives? Do I have a plan B, C? So when it actually happened, he wasn't caught off guard. He didn't let his emotions take over. He already had a backup plan. He immediately called an investor he had lined up as an alternative. A meeting was scheduled, and within a week, he secured new funding, on even better terms than the original loan. But the most important lesson wasn't that he found a solution. It was that nothing in life could take him by surprise anymore. Tom applied this mindset to every aspect of his life. When hiring a new employee, he asked himself, what if they quit within 3 months? And made sure he had a replacement strategy. When signing a major client, he asked, what if they cancel at the last minute? And ensured his company wasn't dependent on just one revenue stream. By preparing in advance, Tom didn't just avoid being blindsided, he built an unshakable mental state. He was no longer a man waiting for disaster to strike. He was a man who had already planned for it. And when you're ready for the worst, there's nothing left to fear. Because in the end, Nothing can break a man who has already prepared himself for every battle. Tom didn't face adversity with panic. He faced it with a stoic mindset. He controlled what was within his power and let go of what wasn't. He stopped seeing adversity as unfair and embraced it as a test of his strength. He detached himself from negative emotions and refused to let them dictate his actions. And most importantly, he anticipated every possible setback, so nothing could ever throw him off balance. With this mindset, Tom didn't just survive the crisis, he became stronger than ever. He was no longer a victim of circumstances. He was the master of his own life. But this isn't just Tom's story. This is a lesson for every man. Life will throw obstacles at you, but you get to decide how you face them. You can collapse, or you can stand firm like a stoic warrior. And if you choose the second path, nothing will ever break you again. Thank you for watching. Support this amazing community by subscribing and turning on notifications now. Hit like and share your experience in the comments to spread positive energy today. Together, we can inspire and uplift each other on this journey.